Thanks so much. That was a ridiculous intro and has ruined me already. Good morning, everybody. Hello. This is probably one of the widest rooms I have ever spoken to, so my apologies if I don't get to make eye contact with everyone throughout the next couple of minutes. I'm up there, yes, amazing. I suppose before I kick off with this, and I know I've got my clicker here as well, just making sure that's all good. Yeah. I'm not here to show you how to use every part of social media at all, and I wouldn't be able to do that even if I tried in 20 minutes or a day. However, I suppose what I want to do for some of you is maybe to refresh you on, the use of social media and how that could help with your event. And everybody here might be on a different journey or have a different experience with social media to date, so hopefully it's as accessible as possible for everybody here. My name is Gianna, and yes, my background is in advocacy, my background is in charity work. I was the former president of the Union of Students in Ireland, so I am very well used to trying to get people to go to events, dragging people to rallies, to try and make them care about something that I care about, and I'm trying to make sure that they also care about. And I suppose that the case is that right now you're in the thinking stage. Maybe you're not even just quite at that thinking stage just yet, and you're looking at down the barrel of August, but you're being inspired, I suppose, by some of the things happening today, maybe some of the conversations you'll have over coffee or over lunch. But I suppose as part of that process, you need to think, okay, well, when I have my event, how am I going to get people to my event? Because my event is class. But it's absolutely feck all use, sorry for cursing on a live stream, if no one's there. And you want people, as Ronan said, to be able to come away and say, I didn't know that thing before about my local area, or I hadn't met those people. And look, it is quality over quantity. So if you get 5 people at an event, and they really get so much out of it, that's absolutely amazing. But I suppose the idea here is to utilise every tool we might have in our arsenal, particularly the free ones, to try and get the word out. And I suppose when you think about communications in general, there's so many parts to that. There's obviously word of mouth. There's obviously your local press. If you're here in Dublin, that's a lot more difficult to get into. You've got newsletters or parish newsletters. Indeed, you've got notice boards, or particularly in maybe urban areas, you might be targeting things like local cafes or locations like halls to try and put up actual physical posters, or indeed some of the collateral and the kind of flags that Ronan just mentioned earlier. But what I'm going to talk to you about is the digital space and the social media space. And I'm going to try and make it not as terrifying as it might feel like at times. The 4 things I'm going to talk to you about is, first of all, the platforms themselves, so the social media sites that you might use. The second thing they're going to talk about is the content, and that's just a fancy way of saying the text or the images that you might put up there to try and grab attention. The third thing, and it's going to probably work through just the short conversation I'm having with you today, is around the kind of tools that you might use to do that, and then spotted throughout all of that some hopefully practical tips on getting through to people on social media. First of all, I think it's just important maybe to have a think about this before we go on, because social media is, it means so many things to so many different people. But one of the things that has always stood out to me as someone who uses social media quite a lot for work and with organisations around the country and through advocacy over the years was the line, social media is more like a telephone than a television. So a lot of the times we approach social media as kind of the maybe nice to have at the end of an event. All of you people who are involved in heritage work and local community events, you are very practically minded. You are in-person people. You are, shaking the hands, shaking the flesh, making eye contact. That is really, really important. And I would never suggest that social media should take any of that away. But what we want to make sure of is that you take any post you put up on a social media site just as seriously as you would if you were talking to the 6-1 News or posting something on the front of the Irish Times, or indeed speaking to someone after Mass. Because quite honestly, I think what we need to do is make sure that we look at any social media we use as a publishing tool, It's something you publish. You're publishing some text online for the public to see, but also they're going to engage with it. So if you're going to use social media, you need to expect and be ready for questions and interaction. That's what makes this kind of media social rather than traditional. This is actually a quote by the much maligned now Mark Zuckerberg, but he has a few things that I think are important to think about. And this, I suppose, does frame the discussion, which is that people influence people, and nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend. Why I say that in a conversation about social media is not just because Mark Zuckerberg mentioned it, because, quite frankly, it doesn't matter how snazzy your video, how amazing your photograph, how snappy your text on social media. If no one else likes it and no one else shares it, then it's getting through to nobody. So one of the most important things, even on social media now, and we hear about the era of these big influencers, and we associate it with a lot of young people making money from being able to create content online. It's been since the dawn of time that people are influenced by other people, celebrities, etc., recommending things. And if we can approach social media in the case of, just because you put something up doesn't mean the social media job is done. And that's one thing I want to make sure that I leave you with, because what happens all of the time with organisations and indeed with individuals is, well, I put up the post a month ago and now no one's at my event. Why are they not at my event? Maybe they didn't see it. And part of the reason why they didn't see it is because no one interacted with it, because you just went offline immediately after you posted it and weren't chatting to anybody. That means you have to put time into social media. And that's the part that we forget when we say something like this is free. But actually, the time, the freedom is the cost is your time. The cost is your energy, and I suppose don't underestimate that. But it's worth it. And you all know this, what social media does. But it's about reaching audiences. It's about that direct interaction with people. But it's also about it's about listening and being responsive. So, I mean, that's the great thing about social media. Years ago, if you'd put something like a press notice into the paper, and it said something was on Friday, and then at the last minute, the heavens open, and you need to move the thing inside, or whatever it is. You can now message people, you can now make sure that people are contacted. You have a way of alerting people in real time, in ways that you couldn't before. You'd be standing outside trying to wave people left and right, or with a cancelled event, and you won't have to do that now. It gives you a human voice, and I know that that's harder and harder to discern at the minute, because so much of what you see online and even what you get on WhatsApp and text message, you're always trying to discern what's real and what's not. But that's one of the things that we're trying to do on social media or in those platforms. And as I said, it's mostly free and fast. And why I say, I'd nearly put an asterisk behind both free and fast, because I'm telling you that it should take time. If you're putting something up and you just flicked it up in 10 minutes, you're probably not doing it right, or you're probably not taking the time you need to make sure that you're looking through it. First things first, even though it's 5 minutes in, but it's very important, which is that, and I know someone's going to speak to you, I think after the coffee break, in relation to using the website to put up your event. It's really, really important. National Heritage Week is a brand, it is an identity, but it's also a trusted source. And in 2024, we need to make sure that those kind of things are reliable. So if you are putting enough time and energy into coming up with an idea or an event in your local area, make sure that it's registered on the website. So that if someone is going onto the website to check about what's happening in the area, or they're going on to the Heritage Week hashtag and they're clicking it, your stuff needs to be coming up there. It needs to be official. And that means that there's some sense of, and as Ronan said, the bar might be low in terms of all the tick boxes you need to have in place, but it's really important it's up on the website so people can check that it's real. One of the also foremost things to think about when you're thinking about social media is that you might think about producing a lot of these things on your desktop computer or your laptop, but pretty much everyone is predominantly looking at their phone. So when you're thinking about putting together your event and you're putting it up on the website for Heritage Week, it might have a big long description, as it should, because you're explaining what's happening. But think about yourself now when you're flicking by and it's everything again on WhatsApp or indeed Facebook or whatever you're on, you're 3 seconds. We have the concentration of a spoon. And that has happened to us, but we now have to respond to that with how we communicate our events. No event is too important to be reduced to a couple of lines and a hashtag, unfortunately. So when you're producing anything, put all the detail and absolutely do that thinking and make sure that's up on the website. But in some of the social media posts, you're going to have to think about, how am I going to get this down to a bite size? There is a reason why people work in communications and why it's a full-time job for a lot of people to work in social media. It's because that takes time. It's not just a case of taking one line and being like, that's it, job done. It takes a little bit of work just to make it a little bit more accessible. So I'm not going to take 1,000 years to go through all the platforms, because that would literally be a nightmare for everyone. But the two that I think, based on the audiences and based on the people in the room and also the people I know who work around heritage events, and in terms of the people we're trying to get to, Facebook and Instagram are probably the most accessible and the most useful for you. Firstly, because Facebook is the location that most people are on. It's a huge platform. It has an older audience, and that is something to be aware of. So Facebook is increasingly an audience plus 40, plus 50, mix of men and women. But ultimately, it has quite a number of people who are on it, who are in their 20s and 30s, that set up accounts but are less active. So that's really important to know, because if your event is aimed at teenagers, then are you getting to them or are you getting to their parents? If you're getting to the parents, that might be absolute job done. That might be where you want to go. But if you're trying to get people in their 40s, what I would suggest then, and 30s, I would suggest looking at something like Instagram. So I suppose in brief, Facebook is known, and you probably know it yourselves, for the use of its groups function. There's a lot of video on there now that wasn't there about 2 or 3 years ago. You're getting absolutely, I mean, if you start on a cat video, you never know where you're going to end up. But the main thing with Facebook, the thing that they've ploughed money into, is that it is a high-functioning media messaging platform. So if you put up something on Facebook, you really should be prepared to have a situation where people are contacting you via Messenger. And if people are contacting you via Messenger in relation to your event, you should be responding to them, answering questions. You can keep it very tight, but just make sure that that's something you're thinking about. And it does, as I say, swing older in terms of the cohort that's active on it. Instagram then, very much a visual site, very much pictures and photographs and designed images. It has two kind of key, I suppose, spaces where that happens. The first is kind of grid posts, which are just like standard photographs or images that you put up. I would suggest you put up once a week, twice a week maximum. But then they've also got what's called a stories function. So anyone who uses Instagram would recognise that. But basically, it's where you can be much more kind of daily or even 5 or 6 posts a day on the stories function. And it's both of them, both Facebook and Instagram, are looking more now at the use of video. Ronan mentioned that you don't need a big camera equipment, and he's absolutely right. If you're putting up something on your Instagram or on your Facebook, that is a video. It doesn't have to be kind of professionally made. I would recommend short and snappy and to the point. One of the things that I've seen that is most used and most helpful at the minute, and it's easy to do, is where quite literally you get a camera, you get somebody who's organising the event to explain in less than 1 minute, looking directly at the camera, what the event is about, where it's on, what's happening, and put that up. Very, very simple. Make sure you do a few drafts first before you put it live. But that's the kind of thing that you want to be kind of producing. Ultimately, and I know that this is it's very complex because there's a lot of stuff happening, but video is where social is going, and that's regardless of which one of these you're looking at, both Facebook and Instagram. But we'll keep it as simple as possible. Content is the posh way of talking about what you're putting up on social media. And it goes back to the old adage, the who, what, where, when, why, quite frankly. And the common sense isn't often so common when you look at Facebook And when you look at websites, when you're looking up a restaurant, you can't find the number for the restaurant. And you're like, that's the only thing I needed. I just needed the number. So think about that when you're putting up something on social media. What would you need to know about this event? You need to know where it's on. You need to how to get there, maybe, if it's not obvious, or if there's a meeting point. I've seen that a lot, and that was really good last year throughout Heritage Week. People who were doing trails and maps and walking gave very specific details as to where to meet. Meet at this particular cross, meet at the yellow gate. Things like that. Local knowledge, but very important. And the one I suppose I probably should have highlighted here is about who is your audience, right? The most important thing of any communication is because the general public does not exist. That is not a thing. You can't talk to the general public. You have to identify who it is you'd like to come to your event. And maybe of course you want everyone to come, but you're going to have to make some decisions about how you're going to talk to people, what the tone is. Are you excited? Are you serious? Is it child-friendly? Is it older person-friendly? Is it for parents to give them a break? So you need to think about that when you're putting up your social media post. And again, what do they need to know? And what do they expect from the event? So breaking it down, you'd want to make a plan, right? And that sounds, again, like something obvious, but it happens all the time that it's a week before the event and you realise that you've announced it everywhere in person but never set it up on social media, and that is a bit of a problem. So make sure you make a plan and work backwards from the event. So you've picked your date in August, work backwards. Choose or make images. I'm going to mention a tool that's really, really handy to use for that later. Draft the text. And I often find if I use the Notes app on my phone, if you're on the go for this, and you really shouldn't be, you should sit down and work this out. But if you are on the go, write it into your Notes app on your phone or somewhere else first. Because what happens so often is if you're rushed or you're running around the place and you're like, I'll just stick that up now on Instagram. There's spelling mistakes and there's an error in the time and all this kind of stuff. And so draft it first, or you post it before you're ready, which is always awkward. Hashtags and tags, sounds like kind of highfalutin sort of stuff, but actually the hashtag just means that when people click the hashtag on social media, it's more likely to connect with other events and pop up for people. I would recommend no more than 2 hashtags, ever, really. Because having about 15 hashtags, like hashtag hello, hashtag amazing, hashtag Longford, like what? Like, where are you going with that? Just put up 2 and make sure one of them is the Heritage Week one. I mentioned influencers earlier, and I actually don't mean people you pay. People who are influencers are key people in your local area or your community or in your organisation that you know have a circle of influence. So first of all of us have a circle of influence. We're all influencers in some way online. The reality is, though, that what you want to do is try and target a couple of people, local county councillors, local librarians, local pages, that could actually put up the post. Maybe they're not a partner on their event, but maybe they'd reshare it. Maybe they'd tweet it or put it up in some other way. So it's the what and how. So I mentioned making a plan, working backwards from the event. And why I say work backwards, because you want to work in the fact that you want to send them a reminder a week out. Most people are really, really busy. Your event is not the first thing on their mind. So you need to be someone who's making sure that you're just given the prompt, a good while out, a week out, a couple of days out, it's tomorrow. Particularly if it's an event that's not already sold out and you're still looking for spaces, maybe it's a walking tour or whatever, and you've actually got loads of places to fill. That's really important to do. And I would recommend kind of using different photos or post types. So, you can say different things. Don't put the same post up every single week, being like, come to this event every single week. You have to change up the sentences. Choose or make images. Again, I'm going to mention a tool for that. It's called Canva later on. But good snaps are key. And maybe you're not a designer, right? Grand. You're too busy actually doing the work. Fair enough, right? But if you are putting up something, don't just bang up the text and be like, it's grand. I would recommend a photograph from maybe a repeat event from last year's event, or something similar, a picture of where the event is going to take place if it's a new event. So maybe it's at a particular location that's memorable, a church gate or whatever. Take a picture of even the church gate and stick it up with it. It's just something, there's some visual. We're a visual people now because we are flicking through texts like nobody's business. And if you're think about what you are consuming yourself and how you need to get photographs to help you remind things of it. This is a key one. Don't crowd it with text. And I see this all the time. A wall of text. A wall of text. If you've loads to say, and fair play to you if you do, that's great. But just break it up a bit. I would either recommend pulling it into kind of a couple of lines where you're getting out that key information, or if you have something really important to say, maybe about accessibility or whatever, break up the paragraph so it's easier to read on the eye. Very important. And one of the things I mentioned a little bit later on, I'll get to it, is you could lead with a question. What are you doing on Saturday the 12th? You know, are you looking for something to do with the kids? Question mark. Or are you between 12 and 15, or are your children between 12 and 15? That's the leading line that just gets attention. It's kind of like, no more than trying to come into this room today and you were kind of bursting by every sort of organisation. You know, that's the kind of level of concentration you have to get to as far as the Heritage Council event. You have to get through all the noise to get here. So you have to put the time in to make sure people can find your stuff. Drafting the text, as I said, I've used of emojis there, very controversial. Very controversial. It is not controversial. If you're using social media, it's just a little smiley face or a little point arrow or a location tab. And there's actually a thing called Emojipedia online. And you can go in there, type in something like map, and you can copy and paste the emoji into your text. And it's very, very easy to do. Again, it's about making it easy to follow. You're making it as easy as possible for people to see your event online and understand what you're trying to explain. Here's just some helpful ones. And look, as Ronan said, they'll be circulated. But these are just some ideas. You know, something's coming soon. Something, like, you haven't even announced the event yet, but a week out you're like, watch this space. People are like, what? What's happening? What are they doing in the library or whatever? And again, you're just building up momentum. And it's about part of that is just about making a bit of a plan, being like, okay, so we're 2 months out. What do the next kind of 6 weeks, 8 weeks look like in terms of just making sure we get out this event online? And again, I mentioned some of those already. If you've got partners or you're working with organisations or you've got funding from someone, even better, make sure that you're mentioning them in the social media post. You could tag local media as well, and someone there might spot it, and that can often be helpful. But this is rounding back to what I said at the start. And there's some kind of exciting terms here like community management. That just means liking people's comments or saying hello or thank you for that or we'll be back in touch or keep an eye out. You don't have to make it personal. You don't have to give over information, but just make sure that you're interacting with people who engage with you. That's important. That's what the algorithms are making you do. And if you don't, your post is just going to sit there. It'll look great. No one's going to see it. And I mentioned the local influencers. You don't want to tag your local Fianna Fáil councillor or Fine Gael councillor or Labour councillor. You don't want to be seen as political in some way. That's fine. Message them and say, I just put up a post there now on Facebook. Would you mind resharing it or putting it into the community group or whatever? Like that is so handy and also so important, and most people will do that for you and give you a hand. Tailor for the platform. That's just a case of like, if you're putting up an image, like make sure it fits. So much photographs go up and it's just very pixelated, or you can't see what's happening in it or whatever. And I'm going to show you a tool now in a second that'll help you with that. Here's some pictures that we did for Instagram for Heritage Week last year. And again, like these were just, the first one was a real photograph of a real man who was looking very lovingly at that tree. But we see how there I've had on it kid and family friendly. Again, even if you're not the designer, make sure that that's in the text. Make sure that that's in the post. That's really important. And it's just pointing out there, just like, this is the key bits you need to know. It doesn't give you any information about Irish trees and folklore, but it tells you where to go and when it's on, and that it's kid family friendly. So that's just the kind of like, you need to pair it right back to try and get through. Some post ideas. A countdown to the event. Sometimes you're like, God, what else am I going to say about this thing now? But I've said all I can say. But if you can do, it's in a week, it's in 5 days, it's in 3 days. Keep an eye out. Registration selling fast, whatever it is. Selling out fast, the second one there again, or like we're really filling up. If you create a sense of urgency, it's really popular. You want people to come. That's a really good one. A behind-the-scenes picture. No, you don't have to be a professional photographer to take a behind-the-scenes picture. Maybe someone's getting something ready. Rowan took a picture of the kind of behind at the castle in his opening remarks. And it could be pictures of people putting together the content or the leaves or, the paintings or whatever it is for your project. It could be someone marking out the trail. And that could be the photograph you put up. That kind of behind the scenes type stuff that people love that stuff. So it also feels like a real group or a real person or real personalities behind it. Another one, and that's the last one there, is announcing your speaker separately. So if you've got someone local or if you've got someone really big coming to speak at your event, name them, make that the post as well. So you've announced your announced your event 2 weeks ago, but now you're saying who's coming or who's speaking at it, and that'll give you another thing to put up. And they're just examples of kind of ones we did last year. And again, look, see how tight that is. That was on Instagram post for National Heritage Week. 1 month left to go. It used a hashtag. It had the little eye emoji after that. And then it kind of gave some information about what was happening. And then it was, give it a look, go on. So it was kind of using colloquial language. You don't have to be overly formal all of the time. Of course you can be in some settings. But in other things, you're being social, you're being engaging with people. I am now running way over time, so I'm going to burst on. But for Facebook, one of the things that you could do, if you're familiar with Facebook, is that as long as you have set up your event page on Heritage Week, if you want to create a Facebook event, it often cuts through the noise quicker. And it means that if you've got a like page on Facebook, so you've got your museum, your local group, your local tidy towns has a like page, and you want to set up an event there, make sure you're sending everybody to register to the URL of the Heritage Week event you've set up. But if you do set it up as an event on Facebook, it often comes up for people a bit quicker, and I have found that. That's just something that I found with experience. One of the key things I just want to mention about Instagram, don't add the link in the post because people can't click it. It has to be in your bio. So just to note that, very important. Ronan mentioned about photography. Don't make people look like a potato is the picture there. Basically, take loads of pictures. And this is before the event even, or as the event is starting. Think about things that you might do for next year. Maybe you're running the same event a couple of times over the course of Heritage Week, and you can use the images you have taken. Even just, if there's children, you have to be very, very sensitive, if there's minors. But instead, maybe take a picture of a hand holding some soil, a hand holding, things like that. You can make sure you can get good photographs that way, but take more than one photograph, please, every time, because there's always someone blinking. And make sure you know what's in shot and what's in focus. Now, these are the two tools I just want to mention before I go. Canva is this one here, and we can send this around. Really, really handy, really easy to use to create an image for your event. So if you have a photograph or you don't, you can make a little post in here and it'll look very professional, and you can put it up. And the main thing here, you can see at the bottom, it gives you the dimension sizes for the particular platform that you're using. Please follow that because that is very important. Linktree is the second one. It's a free app, and basically it means that if you, in your organisation or in your group, have like 5 things happening that week, it's trying to prioritise which one you're putting up on social media is really, really hard, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So if you have a Linktree, it means you can actually link to all 5 events. So when people click your bio on social media, they can get through to that, and you can have all of the links up for all of the events that's happening. So have a look at it. Very easy. Tips: post relevant content regularly, but not constantly, not every day. You don't have to bombard people. Maintain professionalism, and I know a lot of people here are volunteers, but it's really important to keep your tone professional, make sure you engage with people respectfully online because you are representing your event as well as National Heritage Week. Quality over quantity, and then connection with those local influencers. And before I go, some of the things to avoid, I know it sounds obvious, but it's really, really important. Don't post sensitive information, particularly when it comes to young people or vulnerable people online who are attending your events. If you are acting on behalf of your group or organisation, avoid taking sides or making kind of political statements, because that might mean that people can't and feel comfortable coming to your event. I've mentioned using personal accounts to post official information. That depends on whether you're the person who's organising the event or not. But if it's your group, make clear who's posting on behalf of your group. Distasteful humour. There's a line, and most people know it. Emojis doesn't fall into that. But just be careful with what you're saying and make sure it's appropriate, for all audiences. Getting into online debates and arguments, not a good idea. I'd recommend against it. And then posting photos or screenshots without people's consent. So again, if you are taking photographs, again, of kids or young people, or indeed anyone, before the event starts, you might say, folks, we're taking photographs at the event today. If anyone doesn't want to be photographed, just let us know. It's okay? And the takeaways. And it's not as tasty as the burger and drink there, but plan it out, calendar it out, because you're about to organise some really, really lovely stuff. You want people to be able to come, people to know about it. So put a little plan together. Work with someone else to help you on social media, if you'd like. The second one is to think about it from the perspective of it's a mobile, so it needs to be short and sharp online. Do the 360, and I didn't mention that before, but it's basically like if you're putting something up, make sure all your details are correct. If you're putting a photograph up, make sure that you've gotten consent from people or you know what's in the photograph. And the last thing is that your event is kind of the reception desk. Your social media is your reception desk, for your event. So you want to make sure that that's warm, friendly, welcoming, accessible. And I know that will be discussed later. Thank you very much, and sorry for going over time.